Welcome to MotherSpeak, where we believe that motherhood is a journey like no other that has the power to transform us into brighter, wiser, more authentic beings. We view motherhood as a spiritual path, ripe with opportunities for growth, transformation, and healing. We rise higher through motherhood together. I'm your host, Carina Devi, and I'm so glad you're here. I invite you to take a breath, settle into your body, and let yourself be wherever you are. Hello, welcome back to another episode of MotherSpeak. I am so happy to be here with you. Experiencing the evolution of this podcast has just been such a beautiful journey. It's always been my way to not necessarily decide what I want to do or how I want things to go, but rather to listen and to feel what wants to come through me, to be able to respond to that creative force every step of the way. You know, this podcast has been through so many evolutions in the last 2 years, and each one was exactly right for that time. I do envision MotherSpeak sticking around for a while. I don't think anything's going to change too much, but of course, how we do things might evolve. So thank you for going on this journey with me and being here every step of the way. Most of you have been listening since the very first episode, and it just means the world to me. So thank you for being here. At the time of recording this, I am 15, almost 16 weeks pregnant, in a very different space than 2 episodes ago. I was 10 weeks pregnant then, still very deep in that first trimester. It's just incredible how night and day the first and second trimester can be. I mean, I just feel alive again. I'm feeling really, really good. The sun has been starting to come out, and I am just taking advantage of every one of those days as much as I can. The amount of joy that I'm experiencing walking through town, not having to wear a big heavy winter coat, but actually getting to, just wear like a shirt and having my baby bump out on display. I feel so proud and joyful. Like I am just beaming, and I'm really loving this stage of pregnancy. I was just looking at car seats, shopping around. I found myself on a couple of websites where I could feel that everything about that website was oriented toward trying to get me to buy something. You know, when you're in a sales funnel and you didn't want to be in there. I was just wanting to read reviews and look at specs. How long can it stay rear facing? And what's the weight limit? And, those sorts of things. I just wanted details. And then I find myself on this website that just feels so gross. That icky commercial feeling, that is the majority of what we encounter in motherhood. If we want to learn about how to prepare for motherhood or how to support ourselves once we're in it, not from a what gear do we need, but how do I prepare my mind, my body, my heart, my relationship, my family. That information should not be so goddamn hard to find, and yet it is. Almost impossible to avoid finding yourself in a very commercialized motherhood space. I'm trying to get everything I need secondhand, but there's a couple of things that I'll buy. I'll buy a new car seat, and I don't know where I was going with this. I think I just feel tired of all of it. Tired of the commercialization of motherhood, because what we're missing is not products to buy. There's an enormous abundance of shit to buy. Some of it very helpful, some of it completely pointless, most of it overpriced, most of it promising things it can't deliver. But what we are all longing for And what we need is the wisdom of mothers who have come before us, the sisterhood of mothers who are doing it alongside us. We need to hear stories that we can place ourselves in. We need to hear experiences that help us better understand our own. We need to witness women nursing their babies and putting them to sleep and navigating life as a mother so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. We may be lucky enough to have a community structure intact. We may be lucky enough to have family that we really love and trust close by who can be there in those moments, who can cook for us, who can clean our home when we are getting to know our new baby, who can give us much needed breaks when we're tired or we just need to not be touched for a little while. But for most of us, we're doing it on our own. Or maybe as a village of one or two, if we have a partner and a mom or a really good friend. And so we're all in this kind of modern motherhood experiment where we are without the majority of what we need. And so we're having to figure out what it is that we need, what it is that we want, and then how to create that in a way that is truly supportive and nourishing and in a way that lasts so that our daughters can benefit and our granddaughters and their granddaughters can benefit. I don't know if we'll figure it out in our lifetime. I'm hopeful that we will. I'm hopeful that we'll see a massive reconstruction of societal structures that really put mothers and children and community at the very base level of the hierarchy of needs, the foundational level. I'm taking this course with Kimberly Ann Johnson right now called Mother Circle. And one of the things that we talked about in a class this week was motherhood is a rite of passage. And that what we often think of as the rite of passage is the birth, right? But that is actually a stage in a rite of passage, and that all rites of passage, whatever it may be, contains 3 phases. The first is separation, departing from the normal world and the people. We might think of that as descending into the underworld, into places that are hidden, where we have to journey alone. The next stage is the transition. That's the peak point, the moment of climax. It's that crowning moment of birth. And then the most important stage is the final one, which is the integration process, to incorporate what we have gone through, what we have learned, what we discovered about ourselves or the world through our journey. Kimberly said, that is the one part of the journey that we can't do alone. That we need our community of people to receive us as we come back from this underworld journey, this rite of passage, to hear our stories, to receive the wisdom we have gained that becomes a part of the collective knowledge of the village. Something she said that was so beautiful is that we don't go on that journey for ourselves. We do it for the village. So when we come back with our baby on our breast, having made it through this portal that is giving birth in whatever way that occurs, our village is rapturous, celebrating us that we have made it through and that we come bearing gifts. Gifts of wisdom, of knowledge, of secrets of the universe that can't be learned any other way, and that they didn't have to learn themselves. They didn't have to go on that journey. So they sit at our feet and wash them and massage them, eager to hear the story that spills from our heart, to receive the transmission of the wisdom that we have gained. When we grow up in community, this is a part of daily life. You probably have a circle of women that is multi-generational, that has a deep well of experiences to draw on. Something that I have really longed for in both pregnancies is a deeper connection to Indigenous wisdom. There's this book that I love called Childbirth Wisdom from the World's Oldest Societies. One of the things that I love most about that book is it feels like immersing myself in age-old feminine knowledge, passed down stories, tips, tricks, all sorts of things related to every part of life. And that all of that has culminated in this very deep, rich understanding of the journey. One thing that I was experiencing very deeply and continually inspired by was the nature of the first trimester, at least in modern culture where we're supposed to keep it a secret from work and social media, and maybe we don't even tell our family or close friends. Having this very deep, consuming experience that comes with all of these emotions and symptoms and all sorts of changes, really big changes. Having all of that kept to ourselves, hidden and tucked away behind closed doors, shrouded in secrecy, magnifies the hard parts. It magnifies any guilt or grief we may feel, any worry or fear, the discomfort of our symptoms. There are so many factors that influence what that first trimester is like. Whether or not you wanted a baby, whether or not you wanted one now, if you've had fertility struggles or a miscarriage or many, how your partner feels, how accommodating your work environment is, how intense your symptoms are. There's so many factors that can make an enormous difference in how we feel and how that first trimester is experienced. For many of us, it's the first wave of facing worries and fears related to pregnancy, birth, being a mother. And because of the secretive nature of the first trimester, so many of us go without any support in a time where we deeply need it. That was really the dominant feeling that I had throughout the first trimester was, I wish I had a circle of sisters to just sit and talk with about all of this. I longed to share my story, to hear theirs, and that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't exaggerating what a hard time I was having. I wanted to hear their remedies and tips and tricks. I feel like I made it through the first threshold, that first initiation that is part of the rite of passage of pregnancy and birth and motherhood, which we're going to talk about a little more today. We'll talk about what makes the first trimester unique, and you'll hear stories of 4 women, Kylie, Maritza, Ahsa, and Marissa. My intention with this podcast is that I can bring a village to you, that regardless of who you have to support you or who you don't have, that you can place yourself in the stories you hear, that when you hear the words of another mother, you hear something that you've always felt but never quite been able to articulate or express. Or that alternatively, you hear the contrast in your stories. But that most of all, these stories help you to process your own experiences. They help you to feel connected to the grand golden spiderweb of mothers across the planet and throughout time. we are having this universal, momentous, life-changing, transformative experience that lasts through many, many years of our lives. And that the impact, the enormity, the depth, and the value of that journey cannot be understated. I hope that it connects you to a deeper layer of yourself, of your mothering, of your understanding of yourself, and most of all, that you feel less alone, more connected, and more whole as a result. This is Kylie's story.
My name is Kylie, and I am a mother of 2 beautiful kids. I have a 4.5-year-old little boy and a 16-month-old daughter. And right now I'm a stay-at-home mom, but formerly I was a dental hygienist. When I was in my first trimester with my daughter, my most recent pregnancy, we had so much going on in our lives. I found out I was pregnant with her when we were in the middle of a big move. We had been living in our camper trailer because we had sold our house, and we had been living in there for about 6 months. When we found out we were pregnant, it was shortly after we had a chemical pregnancy. So all of those feelings of being scared and possibly losing that pregnancy were really on the top of our minds, and my husband kind of had a hard time really getting into the joy of being pregnant because he didn't want to get his hopes up like we did last time. We both kind of had a lot of, grief and sadness when we had that chemical pregnancy. So it took us probably a few weeks before we really felt comfortable in feeling into the first trimester of the pregnancy with my daughter. While all of that was going on, we were in the process of closing on a house out of state, which was a really big deal for us, and living in a trailer in a small space. And I just knew, because we were finally finding our next home, that my daughter felt safe and secure to stay Earthside this time. We had met her in many different dreams. My mom had met her in dreams. My mother-in-law had met her in dreams. And I got to see what she looked like all before we even conceived her. So that was very, very special. I had all those typical feelings of, like isolation, not sharing it with anybody because we didn't want to have everybody knowing just yet. We had so many other big things going on. But once we were moving and all this stuff, that's when my morning sickness hit me really strong. I was interviewing for jobs as a hygienist here, trying to keep it secret that I was pregnant. Thankfully, I wasn't really showing yet. I had more roundness, but I don't think anybody would have been able to tell that. So we kept it quiet until I found a job, and once I accepted it, I let them know that I was pregnant, and they were totally okay with that. But I had a lot of fear around being pregnant while interviewing for jobs, just because of how that can be for women and how people can discriminate against you and how it can be harder to find jobs when people know that you're pregnant. I mean, they're not allowed to do that, but it definitely happens. And trying to unpack a whole household and, just parenting a 2-year-old and navigating a new area, trying to find new grocery stores, new places to get your hair done, doctors, setting up health insurance, all of the things were going on while I was so sick and not many people knowing about it. And one of the hardest parts for me was after leaving all my friends behind, shortly after we left, my really close friend told me she was pregnant too. So we were both pregnant at the same time, only 2 weeks apart in our due dates, and that was really hard for me to be away from one of my really close friends, because I had always hoped and dreamed that I would have that experience with somebody that was close to me and a friend, to have our pregnancies together. And being so far apart was a little bit sad. The plus side was that we did have each other to call and talk to and text with about all of the really hard parts of the first trimester. And that part didn't feel so lonely because we were both sick, both working as dental hygienists, dealing with all the smells of everybody's mouths and trying to get through it day in and day out. So that part was really nice, to have that sisterhood and friendship. And if I could encourage other first-time moms or second-time moms, anybody in their first trimester, if you have a friend that's going through the same thing, it's really, really great to have that sisterhood and companionship and being able to share something with somebody that knows exactly what you're going through it and they're going through it with you. That was really a blessing. And to have my husband that was so supportive the whole time, that helped me in my lowest moments of being sick and encouraged me and gave me massages and rubbed my feet and just did anything he could to relieve some of the stress of all the things that were going on during that first trimester. It was a big, big time, and I really felt like being pregnant with her birthed a whole new chapter for our lives. And I've noticed with each of my children, big things have happened every time I conceived, and what our lives have turned into is just more beautiful than I could have ever imagined.
This is Marissa's story.
My name is Marissa Baumgartner, and my dogs are already interrupting this recording. I am currently about 17 and a half weeks along in my second pregnancy, and it has been a full-on journey. It sounds so cliche, but this time around has been so interesting. I found out I was pregnant about halfway into January. I had just come home from a weekend trip of teaching some breath work to a group of really, really wonderful people. And I had an inkling that I was pregnant, but I also was just unsure and felt completely not ready to go through this unfolding journey again. My daughter will be 3 in June, and though I know that everything is exactly the way it needs to be for my path, I still have hesitated to feel ready to bring life into the world again. And with my first pregnancy, my first, postpartum experience, I felt like it took me quite some time to feel regulated in my body and in my mind and in my soul as a new mother. And for me, getting pregnant the first time and raising my daughter, I had to prove to myself that I could be a mother. I had to prove to myself that I could raise my daughter and give her a profound and wonderful early childhood experience. That was the karmic reasoning behind having my daughter and behind becoming a mother. I had known from a really young age that I would be a mom and that birth work and babies would be a part of my life. I have always loved babies. I have always loved children. I have always loved birth, and it still continues to be a center of focus and passion in my life. And so with that postpartum experience, I knew that I needed some time to adjust and to really step into this motherhood role. I have so much wonderful support around me, the women around me in my life, my mom, my grandma, my aunties, my grandmas. They're all so profound, and I have a really great group of friends that I trust and that I know is there to support me. And all of those things were really helpful for me during that time. I really didn't know if I wanted to have more kids. I had like really been processing that for quite a while. I would get all these questions about, are you going to have more babies? Are you going to get pregnant again? And I was just like, I'm good right now. I'm comfortable. I feel really strong in where I'm at as a mom. And I had really felt like I had created my identity, that rebirth experience that we have after we go through pregnancy and birth. I felt like I had finally cultivated that. I breastfed for 2 years. So I had only been not breastfeeding for 6 months when I got pregnant again. And needless to say, I have been excited the whole time. I don't know if excited is the right word because I've had to adjust to being excited. I initially was just like really shocked and almost, I don't know even how to process how I felt when I knew that I was pregnant. I had felt a little spirit baby around me for quite a while. I've always felt like I would have 2 kids, but again, just like really battling between feeling quote unquote ready. And I have had to really accept this pregnancy. I have been kind of using the analogy that when I got pregnant the first time, I really wanted that baby. And this time, this baby really wants me. And I have found a lot of solitude and solace in that. Needless to say, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, my life felt like it picked up and got so busy and so stressful, and everything felt like it was changing as soon as I got pregnant. Things got busy at work. I felt like I had no time. I went through the whole exhaustion first trimester thing. And this is where I say subconsciously, I think that because I was like a little bit anxious about being pregnant again and about changing up the family dynamic, changing my relationship dynamic again, going through all of these changes, I subconsciously started to keep myself busy. I fell out of, my daily practice and just kind of lost all of that passion for life that I had been feeling. And that is really challenging for me. As a projector, I feel like I have really had to step into what my life looks like in that sense. And, it took me some time to really build myself back up. Not even build myself back up, but to step into this new creation of who I am as a mother. And it has been the most wonderful part of my life, no doubt. So with the first trimester, I have just felt a lot of different feelings. And even into the second trimester, I still kind of feel like things have been lingering. And I really appreciate this part of this process in this pregnancy because it has made me relook at myself in ways that I didn't realize I needed to. I have been in a part of my life where joy feels really hard. It feels like it's impossible sometimes. Being pregnant while you have a toddler is completely different than being pregnant for the first time. The amount of space and time and energy. And nonetheless, I also work with kids all day long. So sometimes my availability for my child that I have right now is really limited. And sometimes I am feeling guilty about, am I showing up enough for my daughter that I have on earth with me now? And am I showing up enough for this baby that I have growing within me? And though I know that I am and that everything is okay, I get in my head sometimes about where I am at. And it has been really helpful to lean on my mom during this time. It took me until a few weeks ago to actually step into that vulnerability and allow myself to be honest about where my feelings have been this pregnancy. allow myself to explore those feelings and not feel guilty about them, being different than my first pregnancy. So I just want to commend Carina and give thanks to her for creating space for women to talk about the first trimester. I am a birth and pregnancy and postpartum lover. I believe in the community of women. I believe in practices that are ancient. And I feel like I am always on the hunt for what we did to take care of ourselves as women, and especially as tribal people, when we were pregnant, when we were rearing our children. And life is so different now than it was for my ancestors. And I just appreciate the communities.
I had this oh shit moment where I realized that in choosing to have another child, I was saying yes to that now. Deep, at times stinging vulnerability again, and that was a necessary part of becoming a mother. It takes courage to say yes to that. It takes courage to say, I will be so open that it hurts. I will be so open that I feel everything, even the things that I have forgotten about or tried not to feel so deeply because I'm afraid that pain is just too much to bear. I have to say yes to walking through that fire.
Of being a woman, of being able to hold life within your body.
I know that it won't be the end of me. I know that it won't devastate me, because that's not the nature of vulnerability.
For everything that this baby has been teaching me already.
We open and we are transformed. We open and we heal. And I just had to trust that. This is Maritza's story.
My name is Maritza Cortez. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Carina, for providing this platform for our stories to be heard and told. As I was reflecting on the questions that you provided, I was brought to all the different emotions that I felt and have been feeling throughout my first trimester. Today exactly I am 12 weeks pregnant. So as you can imagine, it's been quite a journey getting to where I am today, and I feel like throughout these last 3 months or so, I've really witnessed this metamorphosis occur, not only externally, but mostly within my own frame of mind, my own perception, my state of consciousness and awareness is gradually shifting and changing. It's felt like sort of a death and rebirth process, coming to an end of my maidenhood into motherhood, which is a journey that is such a mystery, yet so compelling in so many ways. What it was like discovering I was pregnant was not a surprise, honestly. It also felt like the greatest gift that I have been blessed with and given this chance, this opportunity to venture into. I had previously had 2 chemical pregnancies, one in January of this year, and then another in October of 2022. So finding out I was pregnant in February brought me so much joy, so much excitement and anticipation. I felt this nervousness for what was to come, and it felt as though I was on the brink of beginning a new life path. I wasn't necessarily surprised, but at the same time there was this shock. I think because of the chemical pregnancies that I had gone through, I sort of developed this belief that it would be extremely difficult for me to have children, or that something was just inherently wrong with me. But of course, upon doing my research, I had come to know how common chemical pregnancies are, how common miscarriages in general, which quickly made me feel less alone, but I still knew that there was less and less talk about miscarriage. So that really prompted me to hone in on my observations and awareness when it came to that subject in general. I feel as though a lot has changed throughout my pregnancy in terms of my relationship to my body, the way I associate to my body, also with my partner and my family as well. The dynamics are certainly changing, and with that comes its own sets of challenges, but also many blessings that come along as well. It feels like such an alchemical process, like a process of alchemy and initiation, transformation. Everything is shifting. Everything. As I had mentioned, my frame of mind is changing. My perception of my own body is changing, knowing that, in fact, I am not tainted and is just a natural part of life. Having my body be able to protect me and at the same time sustain life. My relationship to my partner is changing. And it all still feels like a mystery that I'm still on the brink of exploring and diving into. And with that comes so much anticipation, so much nervousness, because it feels like there is so much that is being asked of both of us in this moment. To change certain things about our lives, to create more space, to create more room. But also I feel like we're both being called to trust in the process more than anything, trust in ourselves. And of course, the mind will always come in and create these stories, these narratives that we entertain subconsciously and kind of feed into, which I feel like is just a part of the process. So I try not to cast so much judgment there. The first trimester has felt beautiful yet complicated in the sense that I have felt this sense of loneliness, I want to say. I almost said aloneness because loneliness may not be the word that I want to use to illustrate. Because I know that I'm not alone, realistically speaking. I know that there are many other women currently going through the first trimester, probably also feeling alone. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that not many women talk about the first trimester. It feels like it's a very private and internal process. Not many women talk about their pregnancy in the first trimester or really share openly how they're feeling. And I think that's something that just contributes to this taboo of, it being too soon to talk about anything, it being too soon to announce that you're pregnant, it being too soon to even think about the progression, which I know I have caught myself in that loop, especially with the last pregnancy losses that I went through. But this time around, I feel, yes, a sense of privacy in the sense that I do want to retreat and go within myself. But also I feel a sense of wanting to be transparent with other people, wanting to share how I'm feeling, share what's going on in my mind, my soul, my heart, and my body. Because this is a very real thing for us. It's a very real thing for those of us who are currently traveling between worlds, going into the first trimester and, really starting to feel the metamorphosis happen in our body, in our mind, in our soul. And it feels very spiritual in that sense. And I think that's the one thing that has kept me going throughout the first trimester is just this awakening that's been taking place in my heart and my mind and my soul. And it feels like so much is pouring out of me, so much wisdom and prayer and hope for a bright future ahead with this little soul that's chosen me to be the mother. It feels so extraordinary in that sense, so emotional in that sense, because I have not felt anything like this. I have mothered myself, I have mothered my pets, I have mothered my nieces and nephews, but there's something different about mothering my own child, mothering my pregnant vessel. And of course, I have experienced my fair share of anxiety and depression. I won't lie. I've had some of those dark moments come in, and I've kind of sat with those moments and allowed them to be still in my heart, because I know that there can be these feelings of not being able to enjoy the process, these feelings of guilt, of shame, of expecting myself to be happy because I am pregnant, but still feeling these feelings of sadness and loneliness and depression, which I know are very human, very real things, and I don't want to negate those feelings whatsoever, because I do feel as though they are part of the process. And there's so much radical vulnerability to be shared in those moments as well. It's so very human, too. So I know that all of these things really contribute to the experience and the journey ahead. And I think as I continue to progress into my pregnancy, I am keeping a state of surrender inside of my heart, inside of my mind, inside of my soul, because I know that there is still so much mystery to be unraveled, and all I can really do is remain still and present in that knowing. And from that point forward, I will know how to navigate the circumstances, how to navigate those feelings and the emotions that often arise within us, and the call for change, transparency, and vulnerability with myself and my partner, my family, my friends, even my work ethic, which I find is quickly changing as I continue into my pregnancy. I find myself wanting to be a little bit more protective of my energy and my boundaries as well.
This is Ahsa's story, which I will read to you. Ahsa says she is typing one-handed on her phone while nursing her baby. I wrote my entire birth story that way. It took a really long time. Ahsa says, I knew I was pregnant when my usual monthly cramps came and went without any bleeding. My period has been extremely regular since it began at the age of 13, so I knew that meant I was pregnant. I had chosen a wild pregnancy, so I didn't take a test, but it was clear I was pregnant, especially after a full 2 weeks passed with no period. I felt a range of emotions upon finding out I was pregnant. Happy, excited, grateful, but also worried, unsure, and a bit scared, as this was my first pregnancy. Neither of us had jobs, and we were living with family. Not exactly ideal circumstances. What surprised me most about the first trimester, and was such a great lesson to learn early on, was that just because other women have or had an experience, it doesn't mean you will too. Even if the majority do. For example, I'm someone who's always struggled with motion sickness, cars, buses, boats, you name it. And I always thought I'd be that mom with terrible all-day morning sickness. But that wasn't the case at all. I was very lucky to have very little. While this was great, I also found myself stressing about the lack of morning sickness. Like there must be something wrong with the pregnancy if the majority of women experience it, and I'm not. What I want to shout from the rooftops is that just because others have a certain experience, even if it's the majority, it doesn't mean you will too. This lesson came back multiple times throughout my pregnancy, second-guessing myself and my body when I didn't have a typical experience, even if I was feeling good. or worrying about something that might happen. The biggest one being having to shift from home birth to hospital birth because insurance didn't cover home birth and I couldn't afford it out of pocket. Being a first-time mom, I decided I wasn't quite ready for an unassisted birth, and a home birth with a midwife is sadly quite expensive where I live. You hear so many negative stories of hospital birth, and this really worried me in the days leading up to my baby's birth, especially because I had pretty much vowed for over a decade that I would never, ever give birth in the hospital if or when I became pregnant. But everything went better than I could have ever imagined. And even now, as I scan help groups and pages related to breastfeeding and baby sleep, there's all this talk about how hard it is and what you should be doing differently. And while it certainly can be helpful for those going through tough times to find community who are going through it too, it was hard as a new mom to read all of that, worrying if it would happen to me too. But again, as I worried in the weeks leading up to her 4-month birthday and the anticipated 4-month sleep regression, I was pleasantly surprised yet again that just because many moms struggle with that time, it doesn't mean I will too. And not surprisingly, my baby didn't have any sleep issues during that time, although I still worried until she was 6 months, thinking maybe the regression would be late. I say all of this not to brag about my experiences. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, or to undermine those who share their struggles and difficulties. I do think it's helpful to hear those stories too sometimes, but to remind other mamas that just because someone else experienced it, even if it's the majority, it doesn't mean you will too. So try not to worry in anticipation of something that may or may not happen, and instead embrace your own experience. Listen to your intuition and seek help or support whenever you feel like you need it. I encourage you to do whatever it is that you feel called to process, sort, integrate your hearing of these stories, to notice what came up in your body, your mind. Perhaps you feel called to stretch or go for a walk or move your body in some way. Maybe you feel called to share your own story or reflect on one of the ones you heard. Thank you for tuning in and spending this time with me. Have a beautiful day. I'll talk to you soon.